Okay, in this week's discussion, which I happen to find quite interesting, we were looking at a couple of things, just kind of looking at two approaches, mostly neutral and non-neutral approaches. But I think the example that the professor used with the gay marriage is actually a really good example of showing that although we can have the same outcome or the same ban on a particular policy, our reasons can be very different. In the libertarianism slash liberal approach, uh, we make the argument based on we need to ban gay marriages because it would erode families and probably reduce reproduction. Whereas in the non-neutral approach, we're just strictly banning gay marriage from a religious perspective. But because of limited time, I want to get right into the main topic. As far as the professor's outtake on Sandel's view, I think that, I kind of understand Sandel's perspective. I think he's implying that it's inherently impossible to have controversial discussions without invoking our religious beliefs or our biases or whatever our personal views are. But I think that the professor makes a very good point in pointing out that we don't necessarily have to do that to be able to engage in controversial topics. And going back to his example, regardless of your religious background, if you can make an argument for abortion that's strictly based on the rights of the unborn child to live, that is completely independent of any religious doctrine. In fact, if we base our arguments on religious doctrine, it creates an environment where new ideas and free thinking is prohibited. Similar to, this is part of the reason why the word has advanced the way it has today because of the fact that we opened up discussions outside of the realm of religion. So I think that, yes, I agree with the professor in saying that you can definitely have controversial discussions or debate that doesn't necessarily have to lean on religious doctrine or personal views and personal biases. And it goes back to this earlier concept of philosophy that we learned in this class, which pretty much says the best argument wins. If your argument is more impactful than the other person's, if they're open-minded, you can convince them to take your position. So I think that we can have discussions about controversial things without necessarily invoking a religious doctrine. So on the second, I do want to kind of touch on another thing with the non-NPR and PR, just kind of abbreviating there. Obviously, when you're working within the same group of people, it's easier. If we all have a common religion or if we all have a common view or whatever the case might be, of course it'd be easier for us to agree on policies. However, especially in this country, we live in a world where you're going to get people from different environments and different backgrounds. So you have to be able to address, or at least derive public policy that will serve them all. If we imposed on Christians what Muslims are used to, it would be unbearing, and vice versa. Sometimes when you see more conservative Muslims and maybe they go to American Beach and they see American girls with shorts and tank tops, to have to impose those on them would make them extremely uncomfortable. So with that point, I do believe that the more neutral we are in policy making, the easier and the better our government is going to be. Views have changed quite a bit compared to the earlier times, so that's just that. So the second really run to the picking which one of these are the best as far as Sanders' argument. I think virtue. Virtue, in my opinion, is the best because virtue does not require it doesn't require benefits. It's just strictly what's good. A consequence-based approach always has to assess benefits. Basically, what is considered a consequence, and who is the person that's going to go through the consequence? Are they good enough for the consequence to be considered bad enough? So that throws that argument out. And freedom, too much freedom is going to lead to abuse. So we all know that. So I think that virtue is the best approach because it's independent of people's personal gains.